Hey YouTube, Mecca here with another Escape from Tarkov video. Today we're going to be looking at 25 tips and tricks to help you on your Escape from Tarkov journey. In the last few videos we covered things like movement and weapon handling, as well as the basics of the medical and health system. You could easily make a video that is 100 tips on how to play Tarkov and what things you need to do in the raid. I've decided to focus on 25 things that I think are actually really helpful to new players, and I found these tips really helpful when I started playing. We're going to go from 1 to 25. We're going to explain why these tips can be really helpful and have a positive impact on your gameplay. Tip number 1 is save for a lucky Scav Junkbox. A lucky Scav Junkbox is a giant container that you can buy from therapists for around 1,100,000 rubles. When you start the game, you see this item, it seems like a lot of money. What you don't realize is that when you start Tarkov, you'll start collecting a lot of items from Scav runs and from your PMC runs that you'll later need either for your hideout or for various quests. Your inventory is already pretty full, and it's going to fill up really quickly if you just store these here. So the Scav Junkbox allows you to store all these items in a huge container, and then you can either use them for your hideout, sell them to traders later if you are running out of money, or save them to sell on the flea market at level 15. Particularly important to get these Scav Junkboxes early. You can get 2, and also really important if you have a standard edition account, which means you start with a very small stash space, and it makes it really hard to keep a lot of these items that you're going to need later on in the game. Tip number 2 is to start upgrading your hideout as early as possible. As mentioned in the last tip, particularly if you have the standard account Escape from Tarkov, you really want to work on upgrading your stash space as soon as possible. It can be overwhelming to learn about the hideout, but I promise you, if you just do a few small things, it's going to help your character and help you complete some quests later on down the line. Building on from tip 2, tip number 3 is craft quest items in your hideout. So once you start leveling up certain things in your hideout, you're going to have the ability to craft different items. Now there are quite a few throughout the game, but early on in your journey from sort of 1 to 15, you're going to come across quests where you need things like Iskra lunch paxes, 60 round magazines, and gas analyzers. And these things can be found in raid. However, if you're having trouble finding them, which is not uncommon, you can actually craft these in your hideout. So tip number 3, craft things in your hideout. Tip number 4 is to use offline maps and offline mode to help you learn the maps, particularly when going into it. I mentioned in the very first video that I made, you can actually use various images or websites on the internet to have a look at a very detailed version of the map. The in-game maps that you might find on your PMC do not offer very much information. So having these on another monitor or another screen, even printing them out is really important. You can also go into an offline raid with your character just to scoot around, have a look at the extracts, and learn the map. Tip number 4, use offline maps and offline mode. Tip number 5 is always loot jackets and filing cabinets. You'll quickly learn that a lot of items you need in the game are contained either within jackets and filing cabinets, particularly keys. Now, early on in the game and even later on in the game, you're going to need various keys to access areas for quests and tasks that you're likely to come across. You can buy these from the flea market, but because this guide is for levels 1 to 15, you're gonna have to find these keys to open these areas. So learning where jackets are and using your Scav to do little key runs can help you to get these keys for when you need them later on in the game. Tip number 6 is to always use your secure container effectively. Discussed in the last video was the fact that you can put some spare meds in there if you would like to not lose them during a raid if you die. But building on point 5, if you find keys that you really need for a quest but you're worried about losing them, you can put these in your secure container. That way, if you die, your key is still there and you don't have to go through the whole process again, finding it for the quest. Tip number 7, I have titled Bags in Bags and Rigs in Bags. What you'll find in Tarkov is that you'll have these raids where you come across heaps and heaps of items and you just desperately want to keep them, to take them out either for your hideout or to sell later. What you'll also find is that with a small backpack or a small rig, you can't really take much with you. But what you can do, and this can also be used to maximize your inventory space, is you can stash bags inside of bags forever. When you're out in a raid, you can also put a rig inside of a bag, and that sometimes maximizes the space because you're still able to put items inside the rig and put that rig inside the bag. So if you've got the time and a little bit of patience, you can actually really min-max what you're able to get out of a raid with. But just beware, as a new player, if you have a lot of stuff in your bag and your rigs are gonna end up having the overweight debuff on your character, still possible to play the game and get out alive, but just be warned. Tip number 8, always use your Scav runs. I always encourage new players to use their Scav runs whenever the timer is up. As mentioned in the previous video, scav runs help to bolster your finances. You can make anywhere from 50,000 to 200,000 rubles or more, depending on how well you know your loot runs or your maps. Additionally, there are a variety of quests in Tarkov that require you to find certain items that are generic, meaning that you can find them either on your PMC or your Scav. And some examples I'm thinking of right off the bat are things like gas analyzers, flash drives, iskras, beef stews, and you can use your Scav run to actually gather up these items so you can slowly chip away at these quests and not risk losing things on your PMC when doing it. Tip 9 is to use the Escape from Tarkov wiki, and it's kind of like a 2-in-1 point, this one. The Escape from Tarkov wiki, as you would imagine, is full of excellent information about traders, and quests, and just about anything you need. If you're not sure if you need an item for the hideout or a quest later on, you can just quickly look it up and the wiki will tell you. The second part of this point is that the Escape from Tarkov wiki has an excellent ballistics chart listing the attributes of different ammos at all calibers you're likely to find in Tarkov. And what's really important as a new player is to recognize the impact that using ammo or different types of ammo have on the success of your player. And I know I made a lot of mistakes early on just using whatever ammo fit the gun that I was using, and often that was a really, really bad ammo, meaning that I was very unlikely to kill any players or even scavs if they were wearing armor. So wrap your head around the ballistics chart and your chances of survival will increase a lot. Tip number 10 is to check the tasks that you are about to do before going into a raid. Escape from Tarkov does not explain a lot, we've definitely covered that, but it does even less to explain where you need to go for different quests and where you need to go to find certain items. There is heaps of information on the wiki, as mentioned in tip 9, but also on YouTube, lots of little quick guides on how to do quests. The reason you need to check this is 1, so you know where you're going in a map, but 2, if you're not too clear on what you're doing, you're going to end up getting close to your quest objective, and then you're going to start to panic and you're going to be focusing on what you need to do, and you're going to be trying to alt-tab between different windows and watching videos all while you're in the raid, meaning that you're not focusing on listening, paying attention to what's happening. So always check that you know exactly what you're supposed to be doing before going into a raid. Tip number 11 is a weird one, and I'm not sure every Tarkov player would agree with this, but my tip 11 is to play the game solo. You'll notice a lot of people play Tarkov in duos or trios or even in a team of 4, and it's really great for learning the game, and it is excellent to have people around you who are more experienced to help you through the game. However, there is a lot to be said for learning the game solo, learning where to go, how to fight, and all of those things that are actually going to make you a better player once you do end up playing with friends or people who are more experienced than you. What I've noticed with players who start their Tarkov journey in a team of 1 or 2 is that they actually rely a lot on other players, and then when there aren't any other players available, they don't really play the game. So learning to enjoy that solo experience, that fear factor, is something that will make you a better player in the future. Tip number 12 is to not take every fight. Years of playing FPS games like Call of Duty, Warzone, Counter-Strike has taught us as players to always attack the objective. There's no real consequence. Because Tarkov has such profound consequences for dying, it's important, and particularly when you're playing solo, to realize the situations where you probably where your odds of survival are quite low. And this includes fighting scavs, particularly scav snipers, but also other players. So recognizing where you've got the initiative on a fight and you can take it on, and recognizing where you can probably just slope away is really important to upping your survival rate and your enjoyment of Tarkov. Tip number 13 is selecting your fire rate. Now, you won't always have this option depending on what gun you're using. Some guns only give you semi-automatic, but there are a variety that will give you the option between semi-automatic and automatic. And if you're new to the game, the aiming in Tarkov is a little bit difficult to get used to. And I would encourage new players to choose semi-automatic over long distances, as 1 or 2 effectively placed shots in the thorax or the head is much more effective than spraying an entire clip at an enemy downrange. I would suggest full auto if you're in close quarters engagement and using a bit of hip fire, but just in the early game when you don't have access to many attachments to reduce recoil and increase ergonomics, it's important that you are maximizing the value of the shots that you take. And so for new players, using semi-automatic is a good way to combat this. Tip 14 is to stop and listen. Again, years of playing other FPS games that are much more fast-paced, we do listen out for things, and sound is a part of the game, but nothing quite like Tarkov. Players will tell you that the audio is a little bit buggy, and that is true. Sometimes there are some weird sound glitches, but overall, sound plays an incredibly large part of the game. So there's nothing wrong in a raid just sort of chilling out turning your head a little bit, just listening out for what's there. Often that reveals quite a bit about what's happening on a map, particularly if you're about to enter an area that's known for having high traffic in it, like dorms in customs, for example. So never be afraid just to stop and listen. Tip number 15 is to remain patient. This ties on with tip 14 as well. What you'll find in your first few raids of Tarkov and your first 10 levels is that once you've got a quest done and you need to get out with this objective, you just literally want to get to the exit as fast as you can. Now this works sometimes, but I cannot tell you the amount of times I've died just sprinting towards the extract without doing all of the things that you need to do to stay alive in Tarkov. And so it's really important to stick to what you know works, scanning your corners, taking time to listen, and it might take a little bit longer, but you'll find your success rate with tasks and getting out alive increases. Tip number 16 is to check your noise. As mentioned in tip 14, noise plays an incredibly large part of Tarkov. Just note that pretty much everything you do in this game is going to make some noise. Now that obviously includes running through bushes and crawling and stuff like that. Even turning too quickly when you're stationary will make noise. The other thing to note is that accessing your inventory also makes noise. So just be aware that every move you make is going to come at a cost, particularly if you're in an engagement with a PMC and it's gone a bit quiet. Just be careful of what you do so as to not give away your position. Tip 17 is to hotkey your meds where possible. We have mentioned in previous videos and even today's video that you can put meds in your secure container or in your bag to access, but be mindful that you actually have to open the inventory screen, right click it and click use. And this can be particularly cumbersome if you're running through an area and you just need a quick painkiller. So hotkeying meds wherever possible is really smart. The other thing is that you also make noise opening your inventory. So if you're in a really quiet area and you want to use meds without making too much noise accessing your inventory, hotkeying them is a great idea, but do be mindful that medding in itself, if you're wrapping a bandage or a tourniquet, will also make noise as well. Tip number 18 is to pay attention to your hydration and energy levels. This was mentioned in the last video about health and meds, but as a new player, when you don't have really high metabolism skills, your energy and hydration is going to drop as you move throughout a raid, particularly if you've been shot and you've been healing and using painkillers. So keeping an eye on these levels and not letting them get to zero is really important. If they get to zero, it makes it really hard for you to make it to the end of a raid and can hinder your chances of succeeding. Tip 19 is to learn stash runs, and this ties in with sort of using your Scav as a way to make money on your character. There are heaps of great guides out there on YouTube about how to loot different hidden stashes and laps to do on maps as a Scav, or on every map that is on Tarkov. So learning these great runs can really maximize the value you get out of these runs and help to boost your PMC's cash flow and allowing you to buy gear and other items that you might need. Tip number 20 is to use the VoIP function. Apart from being a load of fun, particularly when you're playing with Scavs and ganging up on PMCs, using VoIP can actually help you to accomplish tasks. Sometimes if you tell people you're friendly, they might just let you sort of pass by so you can get your quest item. But here's the other thing. If you say you're in dorms and customs, for example, and you say, hey, I'm a friendly, I need this quest item, and someone says, nah, go away, like I'm going to shoot you, at the very least, you're going to get a little bit of an idea of where that player might be to give you the upper hand if you end up fighting them. Tip number 21 is to spend money leveling up different traders as you level up your character. Different traders need certain amounts of money spent and levels gained, and once you reach those loyalty levels, they're going to go up and going to give you access to more gear. Later on in the game, this becomes less relevant because you're going to be spending a bunch of money with them all the time, modding up weapons and buying gear. But early on in the game, you want to spread your money out just to make sure you are reaching those loyalty levels and unlocking all the items that are available to you at that level. Tip number 22 is relating specifically to Scav raids, and my advice on tip 22 is to not kill other Scavs as a Scav. This has two effects. When you're on a map and you kill a Scav, it immediately means that all the other Scavs on the map are going to start to try and shoot you if they see you. This makes it really difficult to do stash runs and to go into populated areas and find items that you might need. It also drops your rep with the trader Fence. Now, Fence is not a great trader, but he does offer some vehicle extracts on maps. And if your Fence rep gets too low, it means that every time you go into a Scav raid, Scavs are immediately going to start shooting you. So as a new player, I would advise you to not kill Scavs as a Scav. Now we're getting into the juicy tips, and the last three are the things that I think are the most helpful for new players. Tip number 23 is to break down your raids as your PMC into small achievable objectives. What you'll notice with quests as the game sort of progresses is that you're going to start getting quite a few on the same map. Now you can go into those raids thinking, I'm going to get all of these things done, But it often leads to a sense of disappointment when you don't get anything done because you're trying to do too much at one time. It can also be really difficult if you're still learning the map, learning the spawns, and learning the general flow and high traffic areas. So my advice is to break down tasks into achievable objectives. For example, early on in the game, there are quite a few quests where you need to mark certain things, 2 or 3 things on a map, and breaking it down into one objective, saying, I'm going to mark this one tanker, and if I do anything else besides that, then that's a bonus. That's going to help you feel that success that Tarkov gives you and complete tasks a little bit at a time until you're more confident. Tip number 24 is something I think every Tarkov player, new and old, would aspire to, and it's don't be afraid. The gear fear that Tarkov gives you in terms of the potential for losing all that you came in with is really quite visceral, can make you feel super nervous, can make your heart rate go through the roof. Just don't be afraid. You often have more success when you're not scared of losing anything, and that doesn't mean you play recklessly, but not having that gear fear can allow you to think clearly, make the right choices, and get more enjoyment out of the game. And lastly, tip number 25, which I think most Tarkov players would agree with, if not all, is to play the game for enjoyment. Once you get into the community, you're going to see a lot of people playing in different ways. You're going to see people absolutely charging through tasks, trying to get that coveted Kappa container or max level or max traders and all this stuff. Some people search solely for PvP in high traffic areas like dorms, in the ultra store and interchange, and all of these different things. But you need to play the game the way that you enjoy it. If you enjoy surviving, sort of crawling through maps, finding stashes, and just like getting a few kills, that's fine. If you prefer to go hard, charge in, that's also fine. If you prefer to just stay on the peripheries and shoot scavs like I do, then that's also fine. Do not let the way that other people play the game dictate how you do. Well, there you have it, guys. 25 tips and tricks for your journey in Tarkov. As mentioned at the start of the video, this is by no means an exhaustive list of tips and tricks. You could make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of them, but these are things that I found, I was doing as a new player or not doing, and it helped me to sort of correct my mistakes. Particularly those last 3 points about enjoying the game, taking your time and being patient are really important so as to feel the success that Tarkov can give. If this video helped you out in any way, I encourage you to like, subscribe, and comment. I've been really trying to work on my editing recently, so any interaction would be really, really appreciated. I stream on Twitch most days through the week at a variety of American and Australian times, and I'll leave those links in the description if it's something you fancy. But until next time, stay safe and take care.